Okay, I'm gonna get started. How's everybody doing? Um, yeah, I know this is a lot later than my usual stream time, but felt like this was a topic I had to cover. Granted, I'm still kind of terrified about discussing serious topics like this on stream, but it's a easier environment for me to work with. If I do a VOD, then I tend to run into challenges where I'm just not focused enough and don't have proper feedback if there's folks online. But I basically wanted to kind of go through an analysis of to kind of go through analysis of like a mental breakdown. Those that know me know I've dealt with a bunch of those in my past and still dealing with a lot of those challenges. And I've noticed it's been kind of a challenge, like figuring out um, kind of the causes for those. Thank you for the follow, Wonderking. How are you doing? Um, so I'm basically like going to go through like a full analysis of kind of like how a recent day of mine went, um, in an effort to kind of like try to figure out, uh, where things kind of broke down in my brain. It's it's also it's also something where I when looking through some of the events, it seems like there's a lot of reasons why the breakdown makes sense, but also like some things that feel like they should be fixable, but I can't seem to like get my mind past. So figured I'd kind of go through that. So first, going to start with like a breakdown of how that day went. Um, oh my goodness, I have not quite figured out how these pens work. So start with basically going through like how the day started. Basically I woke up at like um 5:30. Oh my word, I'm terrible at drawing. About 5:35 a.m. I just realized I am terrible at I'm terrible at drawing. my my handwriting in VR is even worse than my handwriting IRL. That's saying something. Hold on, I'm gonna try to do a little better with that. Do I have erasers? I think there's erasers over here. Eh, why can't I grab them? Oh my word. Okay. There, I've got an eraser. I think. Does does this not erase? There we go. Wake up. Jeez, what the heck? Yeah, I don't know why I'm having such trouble with this whiteboard. Oh my gosh. All right, I'm gonna have to stand up for this. Oh, I'm kind of admittedly a bit tired, but whoa, hi. That was weird. Okay, okay. Night nerd work. Oh, rough work. All right, you have a good one. You have a good one, Bacon. Also, why the heck can I not see where I put the camera? Did I make it invisible? I think I made it invisible. That's that's gonna make things a bit challenging. Hi, Cool Soft. How you doing? Need to like rearrange where that is. Perfect. Okay, wake up at like 5:35 a.m. At that point, got to do like the morning routine. basically with that, there's actually a lot involved with that. Basically, I have to like get myself showered, get my teeth brushed, get my morning meds, get my wife's morning meds, get my kids' morning meds, and then hopefully have room to get breakfast assembled before I have to start work. And then usually I have to get my wife breakfast as well. So a lot of stuff involved in that morning routine. So with this, in fact, I think this might have been the earlier day. So I think this was actually the one day where I couldn't shower. So that might actually have been a little earlier than 5:35 I had to wake up. So now we get to the point where we start work. And basically it's like kind of a standard 8-hour job with like a 1 hour unpaid lunch. And this day I had, so I'm like basically supposed to be going full time back to the uh, physical office every weekday of the week. This is the one, at least for now, the one day that's still from home. There's kind of a reason for that, and I'll get into later. And then, kind of during work, end up with an interesting. Gosh, I gotta fix that. Oh, hello! I accidentally grabbed my UI. So I ended up with a scheduling conflict at some point. Basically, there was another reason I was working from home that day because my wife needed me to take the kids to uh or not take the kids to something. She was taking them to something. I had to take the kids back from something because she had a meeting um that she was attending and couldn't pick them up. And she's like, "Okay, make sure you're able to step away for your lunch break for that." Well, little did I know that on the work that I ended up picking up that day, because I basically do tech support, um, end up with me needing to be on a meeting. So, um, I end up getting into a bit of a fight on that, which is kind of rough. 'Cause I ended up in a situation where it's like there's not really any easy way to resolve this unless I'm able to have somebody, you know, suddenly pick up the work from me, which is challenging because we're all really busy. Um, that one kind of resolved itself, luckily, because the meeting got delayed. I say meeting, but it's a little more important than that because usually most meetings are like, people are just saying stuff. No, this was actually like literally related to tasks. So it was actually something important. It's like, well, can't skip that easily. Can't really rearrange it easily. Luckily for that, luckily for me here, holy criminy, my writing is terrible. Luckily for me there, got delayed by them. They're like, oh, they don't come until another hour. So imagine to resolve itself perfectly, but I kind of shot most of my day right there. It was already a big stressor. Um, so luckily the rest of the workday went pretty decently. I was able to like pick up the kids during the lunch break, and then I get off work, and like I mentioned, since this was my early work day, that was went down here. I actually had to be off by 3 p.m. so I can get get the kiddos prepped for therapy that I have to take them to, um, and once I'm off work, that means I'm basically assembling a bunch of lunch, well, not really lunch, dinner for my daughter. Is basically, she has like challenges with um eating food. It's basically I think they call it ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. And then there's a bunch of other stuff. Um, a mental therapy for my son. That one's a little more complicated to go into. So basically, out of the house for like 3 hours. Therapy for kids. And that's actually like 2 hours of the actual therapy and then 1 hour of travel time. So by that point, when I get back, we'll go over here. It would be, let's see, 5, about 6:30. Then I'm back home. And normally by then, well, I think I ended up getting like a bunch of us some dinner, as well as the wife some dinner. But this is one of those moments where the kiddos wanted to sleep. Oh yeah, and by the way, before this time, low level exhaustion starts to hit. Spelling is awful. So by then, here's how I know I had low level exhaustion when I was at therapy. I basically like didn't have, even though I had like devices I brought with me that I could kind of kill time with. I was just like, I need to rest my head against the wall. And yeah, it's one of those days where it's like, oh, the tiredness is starting to hit. Um, so yeah, by the time I come back home, I'm already like slightly exhausted, and basically get all of us dinner, and then the kids are really wanted pool, but of course, an adult has to be with them at all times. So normally, my wife's the one that prefers the pool. She's actually the whole reason we have it because I don't like swimming, but she does. So it was only because of her that we have the pool because yeah, I didn't want to deal with the cost. I didn't want to deal with the maintenance. I didn't want to deal with the time investment. But it is what it is. I'm not one out on that one. Everybody else wanted it. I didn't. But let's see. So by that point, I have to get them ready for the pool. We're in there for about like an hour. Then afterwards, the kids have to shower because, of course, they've been in the pool. They wash. Just realized that right another term be kind of funky. By that point, though, I'm starting to hit medium exhaustion. I'm also getting like my wife food around that time, so Basically doing a little bit of multitasking. So here's a point where medium exhaustion hits. And kind of like, oh, I actually didn't go into more detail on that, but you know, basically I'm starting to get like slightly more snippy by that point, but not like really. It's just kind of low grade at that moment still. Let's see. Then like once the kids both shower, wife tells me that daughter didn't wash her hair, so I gotta, or at least she didn't wash it well enough, so I gotta wash the. I have to wash her hair, which in this case was a bit of a challenge because it was just tangled beyond all belief. So after that point is pretty much when I'll create a dividing line here. High level exhaustion hits. And this is the point where mental breakdown occurs. At least for me. So when that started hitting, I was basically starting to get really snippy. Except like surprisingly, I was actually able to at least like express myself without instantly going, you know, anger mode. Sometimes if I'm really exhausted, it can be a bit rough, but in this case, I was like anytime there was additional tasks I had to do, I was let my wife know that, hey, I'm frustrated, I'm extremely tired, I'm not doing well, so they're aware that if I sound snippy, that is why, because I'm at that point. Once a high exhaustion hits, I just want to either go to bed or find some way to clear my mind, which we'll get to that in a moment. I think, yeah, by that point, wife is wanting food again. I can see how you have problems. You're extremely busy basically all day long. Get rest. Yeah, that's kind of how it goes. By the way, hi, Black Spots. How you doing? Um, so you'll notice, wife already had dinner right here. So I think this is by what? So like this here was a little bit after 6:30, whereas this is basically about 9:30. And there's actually a bit of a reason for that quick rehungering, shall we say. She did have weight loss surgery. So with that, it's almost like you have to have little amounts of food. Um like smaller amounts of food throughout the day. So when that second hunger is hitting, it's because the body goes through the food faster because stomach's smaller. Um, yeah, it obviously can't fit as much just because of the surgery. So you doing good? Was about to go to bed. Decided to watch the stream again. Yes, it is weekend. Yeah. So and funny thing about my wife is there's not really easy options when it comes to food, or at least let me clarify that. Because of the rampant nausea that she has, it's not there's not a wide selection of options that she can really pick from without like, oh, this will cause uh more nausea or stomach upset or et cetera, et cetera. Any number of stomach symptoms you can think of. So it's like you're basically assisting someone that has more or less this persistent like stomach flu, but not quite. It's like if stomach flu were sitting on the fence and it didn't know whether it wanted to be active or not. It's kind of like that thing. Um, so let's see. I got my food. I think there were some other tasks. By the way, by this point the kids are in bed, so lucky thing there. So by that point I have to get the meds for wife, and then I do my bedtime routine. So basically my meds, teeth brushing, all that stuff. I think by this point it's either like 10:30 or 11. Or 11. So there's a lot of stuff I'm going through in a day, but what happens here when I'm at like the kind of end of the day where it's like, well, finally got all the stuff handled. By this point, once I'm in like the get ready for bed mode, my brain is kind of in two states at that point. So I'm gonna like do kind of an overlay thing. Hold on. That's why we have another color of pen. So with all that's happening, I basically am in a state of high mental and physical stress. Oh my word. I am really bad at drawing. So, yeah, I physical mental stress. So, physical stress would be easy enough to handle because I'd be like, oh, it's bedtime. I can start laying down. But the mental stress alone becomes a challenge to deal with because, laying down easy enough. I can be like, oh, I can, start relaxing finally. But with the mental stress, this is where everything basically starts to eat itself. Because the challenges here is that I am more or less perpetually on call, shall we say. If the wife needs something because she's dealing with medical disabilities, uh, if she calls me, I basically have to stop what I'm doing, like immediately, go help her. That actually didn't happen this night, thankfully. All that was front loaded and all this schedule, but there's still like a little bit of that's in the back of my mind. There's also like, you know, unfinished tasks that kind of persist constantly. So a little thing about that is the house is essentially in a perpetual state of disarray because you'll notice in this whole schedule, there's not really much time for maintenance. Heck, there's barely even time to get myself food. I basically have to cobble stuff together pretty quickly, without much time. So yeah, there's not much time for cleaning up like kitchen or living room floor or other parts of the house. And you know normally, like, I do have like two kids that I take care of, and they're like old enough that they're able to do chores. And my obviously in this case with all the stuff that I had to take them to, there's not much time they had either to do chores, except with it being summer, they did have like all that time during the morning. I think my son did a bunch of stuff, but my daughter, that's the one that's a challenge. It's kind of part of the reason why they have therapies to kind of, you know, help them deal with some of the mental blocks they're doing, but there's not too much that can address, you know, helping my daughter learn to clean up after herself. There's been so many attempts that both I and my wife have made to try to teach her, hey, you made all this mess, daughter. You have to clean up this mess because, can't just leave stuff lying around. Yeah, if you leave your toys out, they could get broken or ruined. If you leave your toys out, you could trip over them or cause somebody else to trip. By the way, she has tripped over her own messes and still doesn't phase her. She's still highly resistant to clean up after herself. So yeah, we have that extra layer of just like, child not listening to what we're trying to tell them, and it's a challenge. So yeah, so with all of that, I'm going to reset the board. So of course, this brings us to the point of how am I going to try to reduce stress? So, of course, by this point, my options are like I could do games, but not really. There's not much time. So, hello. As much as I wish it were easy, and here's actually kind of a sad thing. Games are typically not a easy option for me anymore because ever since I think it was sometime during COVID, might have even been before, it's been a lot harder for me to actually de-stress from playing games or even reading a book. I did used to enjoy reading a lot as well, but that hasn't really worked out. I'll go ahead and put books as well. And just so people are aware, de-stress is the topic. Oh, no plush reading. Yeah, sorry, Terry. Normally I'd have it, but I'm kind of focusing on serious topic today. How you doing? Um, so yeah. Where'd my other pen go? There it is. Oh, it's backwards. It's backwards. So those end up being a challenge because they don't really de-stress the way they used to for me. Streaming, whoops, is one option that generally helps me de-stress. Come on, let's clear that. But in this case, I'm time limited, so I wasn't able to do that this time. That's not for today, obviously. But yesterday, how was I survive without finding a matching plush? I am dirt. You can pretend I'm plush. How about that? See, I'm fluffy. um, yeah, streaming is usually, if I have enough time, streaming is what my go-to for de-stressing because it's easy for me to basically find what do you call it? Stimulus. Like the even though games isn't quite as stress reducing by itself as it used to be, it improves drastically in a streaming environment. Having people around helps de-stress as well in a streaming environment, but that's assuming I actually have time. Trying to stream when it's like 10:30 p.m. or 11 on a work day is not great. It just doesn't work out. So what happens if these fail? Well, my next option is wrong pen. Is finding friends to be with. So you were live on YouTube. I had to leave stream before lurking in. Oh my. Yeah, one other option is, I could hang out with friends, but here's where my brain gets ultra complicated. Let's see. Left stream really hate my small screen. Oh no. So of course there's several different ways to be with friends online. Okay. VC or Discord. Well, Discord VC specifically, I guess. And then VR. I'll just write VR. Technically I could include games on this, but that kind of comes back to the no time challenge. Because with these two, they're pretty easy to like drop in, drop out as needed, at least if it's like a group setting. Obviously with Discord, kind of more ad hoc if you're like talking to someone in a more direct, like one-to-one fashion. VR chat, you can kind of bounce around between worlds. But here's where my brain starts to ruin things. And this is why I'm going to get the red pen. Okay. So in a VC setting, like even if I'm in a group of people in a VC, my brain will hit a sense of loneliness. I think that it is because of I honestly don't fully understand what it's because of. It's almost like my brain needs some kind of direct stimulation. So if I'm just hearing conversations and either not directly interacting or not being interacted with, then my brain starts to isolate itself, and that's when it's I don't know if any of you have had to take like mental questionnaires where they will have like you know I say multiple choice, but it's one of those that's like agree disagree that's in a scale, that sort of thing. They will usually have like a question that's like, do you feel lonely when like in around a group of people or around people, or that sort of thing. The longest time I never understood why that question was a thing, because most of my life I actually had pretty decent mental resilience, kind of. I did have to deal with bullying, that's its own challenge. That's kind of standard fare, sadly. But beyond that, I was actually able to handle myself pretty decently on a mental level, at least during grade school, junior high, high school, that sort of thing. Most of college had its own challenges, but that's college. It's you know, work for education, and you're dealing with essentially your first steps of moving out of the parents' house. So that's just like kind of part of the learning process there. So didn't really have too much mental challenges back then, but uh, once I started having more of the challenges at home with my wife's medical conditions, with trying to keep the house together, um, I started to see more of this sense of loneliness when around people, um, which not fun. VR chat, was, yeah, VR chat does have the benefit of easier recovery if I can get the resources I need. So there's actually, if y'all know about my Phantom sense, that's actually part of the reason why um, I'm able to recover easily. Because if I have somebody messing with my Phantom sense, it will actually like kind of slowly calm the brain down from a lot of the challenges that it's dealing with. Heck, even without that, um, if I'm just talking with someone in that environment, um, even without any direct interaction, then I'm more able to kind of stabilize myself just through that discussion. But this ends up having its own challenges where it's kind of difficult for me to find people. So I'm going to have to expand on this one because people are probably not going to understand what I mean by that. So for this particular day, hello Percival, how you doing? So for this particular day, and I actually like had to write this down to remind myself what my brain was going through, because it's hard for me to retain knowledge long term when I'm going through a lot of daily busy days. Um, so by this point, like I hopped into VRC on this like day where I had the like all the stuff going on, that was on the list I had earlier. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to try to calm my brain down, and VR chat would be the most beneficial method of attempting, at least. Um, so by this point, I was like seeing who could I hang out with that I can try to calm my brain down with, because it's kind of one of those situations where I need interaction to get my brain out off of its self destruction. Um, so I saw that a few of my close friends on that day were streaming. So at that point, I didn't go to them because I'm like, okay, I'm already like starting to crash out mentally. I don't want to bring that negative energy to their streams. I think there was others that were celebrating a birthday. Same thing there. I basically get really concerned about, in celebration or streaming contexts. I get worried about, kind of crashing the party, so to speak. Um, and, after I saw those, I sent like a few invite requests to some friends after that point, but didn't really get any responses. Um, let's see. Started coming through like all the friends list in VR chat, and here's the funny thing about this part. This is kind of why I have a big challenge with how my brain acts most of the time. I will go through like my whole friends list, and because I have a hard time forming um close friendship, it's very weird how my brain works. Most people that I've associated with are to probably more likely to consider me a close friend than I am vice versa. And that's not saying like that's not saying I don't consider the friend, more that I don't consider them close enough to, what's the word, like to, it's almost like there's a certain trust barrier my brain has to get through, and I don't necessarily, trust is a bad word in this case, not trust barrier, but like a certain level I get where I feel if I'm like down, or like starting to be depressed, there's a certain level that like of closeness that have to be with that person in order to feel comfortable like approaching them when I'm feeling down. And here's where things get weird. It's not necessarily because of my own feelings in that case. It's more that I'm worried about poisoning the relationship. Because a lot of times, like if I don't feel close enough to the person, then I feel like if I'm going to, when I'm in a rough mental state, that is just going to cause a rift. Sorry. So like even though I do have like a list of folks I could reach out to, I'm just worried about causing challenges. Give me a moment. Okay. And honestly, a lot of that kind of makes it hard for me to reach out to even the close friends sometimes, too. And then, like, at that point, since I was worried about reaching out to anyone else on the VR chat friends list and went through the Discord friends list, bear in mind, this is all happening like around 11 p.m., somewhere between 11 and 11:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So most of the East Coast is either asleep or they're heckin' night owls. And most of the rest of the America's region is preparing for sleep. And usually there's not too many folks from the Europe region that are online, because I think by that point you'll be starting to get into the morning hours and they're just barely starting to wake up. So I start to look through the Discord list at that point, and usually when it's like this late, hardly anybody's online. So I'm like, oh, I don't see hardly anybody in the online status. I usually don't want to bug anyone that isn't showing online on Discord. And of course, with all the steps I've already gone through, by this point, my brain's starting to really sabotage itself, where I'm like, even anybody that is online, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't bug them, because bear in mind, like what I mentioned here, VC and Discord ends up being a challenge. It's a little bit easier if I'm just doing a direct call, and honestly, I need to like try to make my brain be more open to that. But by this point, if I'm like trying to contact someone over Discord to like hang out with them and have them come to VR chat, I'm already dealing with like one challenge of it being really late, and two, the whole idea that I'm basically asking for help rather than just hang out. And here's the funny thing. When I say asking for help, most of the times when my brain is going through all of the mental nonsense, I'm usually not necessarily looking to discuss that, the topic, because it's a reoccurring thing. Most people already know that. Most people already know that my day is busy. By this point, when my brain's breaking down, it's trying to handle severe exhaustion. It's not necessarily trying to handle trauma. It's just trying to recover from a busy day, and it's basically in kind of self-destructive mode by that point, because there's a lot of baggage that comes with the day, as well as what's just in the background of each day, that there's kind of a thousand cuts scenario where there's just, you know, a whole bunch of different things affecting that uh mental state, where it's all just like piling on together. So by that point, once like all the options are exhausted, then, you know, I think for that specific night, I basically just started to lay down and cry, honestly. Yeah, sad to say, but that's kind of how it goes. There was actually someone that did end up joining me that night, though. And it's kind of amazing because it's someone that doesn't really talk, but kind of having their presence alone is enough to slowly calm me down to the point where I did actually fall asleep a little bit in VR by that point. Um, Actually, for a fair amount of time, in that situation, I think it ended up being like a little less than an hour that I'd fallen asleep in VR then. And, oh yeah, funny thing I forgot to mention is I usually add music when I'm doing this step. I have like a playlist that I assembled where it is all just ambient calming music. You know, something that's basically built to either put me to sleep or calm my brain down. And I did have that running pretty much most of the time I was going through that, but sometimes even that, it feels like, you know, trying to push back an entire flood, trying to push back an entire tsunami with a little more than a single sandbag. It's like it does something, but doesn't feel like much. But yeah, this is, it's like kind of analyzing all this. A lot of it is me, it's self-inflicted by my brain because there's a lot of stuff that it's hard for my brain to get past. Because like this here is both true and untrue at the same time. Like there's people, but because of a mental block, my brain doesn't see that as an option. Or at least doesn't see most of it as an option, I should say. What about tidal wave? Oh, I was making an analogy that the music option here, sometimes applying that to try to calm myself down feels like using a single sandbag to try to keep back a tidal wave. Like it's not going to do much. So, yeah. One of these days I'd like to figure out how I can get past a lot of the mental blocks. A lot of the busyness is its own thing. obviously I have to do what I can to, make the day go through a little bit easier, but that takes time. Trying to address the medical issues my wife has been a 6-year process, and there's been no relief. I'm now getting called by my wife, so one moment. I'm gonna go AFK mode. Okay. All right. I think that's back. All right. So, I think if I had anything else to cover, but I'll be honest, like that schedule I listed before is essentially the norm for every weekday rather than the exception. With the only real difference being that that one has a few things that are yeah, a little more specific to it. Like that one was like a work from home day, whereas most of the others are commute to office. That's about say about 40 minutes to 40 minutes back. And then of course that one was a therapy day for the kiddo, so it's the only day that has like 2 hour thing attached to it. Although with today, it's kind of interesting that I have the I get back from work from the office and then like immediately it's like wife sends me a store to get dinner items. I have to make her that dinner as well as see I think my son made himself a sandwich. This is the funny thing. I'm so glad that my son has better eating habits than I did at his age. He will actually eat lunch meat, and I'll be real. When I was his age, the only kind of lunch meat I would have was bologna, and yeah, older me is like kind of cringing a little bit about that. But now he'll take the good lunch meat. He'll take like the nice thin slice ham or turkey, which yeah I would not be able to handle at his age, but he loves it. I'll sometimes do like peanut butter sandwiches, typical staple, of course. Um, and then my daughter's a challenge to get to eat properly, so that's always a crapshoot, sadly. But yeah, with today it was like a whole bunch of prepping of dinner, getting of dinner stuff, and then like, well, by the time dinner was done, it's 7, and the exhaustion was already hitting. So I was like, great. My wife had me make roast beef for her today. I actually had a little bit of it as well. Specifically, it's like roast beef cooked in au jus. And here's a weird thing. Here's a weird thing about the au jus sauce that we have. That we got from the store. Apparently, it has dairy, which is surprising. And my son can't have dairy. He has like some sort of like delayed reaction to it. It's like messes with his GI tract, so it doesn't really work out well for him. That's why he had ham sandwich today. But yeah, it ended up being that even just like that little bit of stuff ended up just um wrecking my levels of stamina. Where it's like, well, I'm exhausted already. And then of course I still have to get the kids to bed at some point after 7. So not directly after. There's a fair amount after. So yeah, that pretty much covers it. By the way, if any of y'all have questions, you can always feel free to reach out to me. Um, eh, Admittedly, I'm always a little bit delayed responding just because busy day. It's also part of the reason why it's a bit challenging for me to reach out because I'll usually get to a point where when that exhaustion is hitting, I am just like, I'm just like wanting to lay down and not have to deal with anything because I'm just way too out of it. But I'm gonna end the stream now. I don't think I'm gonna do a raid out this time unless some one of you is interested in me doing so because I'll be honest, I'm a little more self-conscious about it when I'm doing a more serious topic stream. Actually curious. Ooh, hello, overlay. What happened to you? That was, oh, that's why. That's the one that's on my arm. But yeah, I kind of figured that there wasn't going to be as many people at this time of night. I started at like almost 11, so yeah, I'll just go for a straight wrap of stream. Where's my chair? And yeah, you all have a good one. Take care.